We've got major breaking news pertaining to the We Build the Wall project. Steve Bannon, former White House advisor, has been indicted, as well as the project's founder, Brian Kolfage, I believe he's the founder, and two others for funneling money to Brian Kolfage. This project, for those that aren't familiar, is where everybody donated to this GoFundMe. They raised like 20 or something $million to actually start building out a wall. My understanding is they did build some small portions of it. They were doing the work, but the indictment has to do with the fact that Brian Kolfage had said over and over again he would not be taking any money. But according to the indictment, they were secretly funneling funds somehow to Brian Kolfage. I believe the total amount was about $350,000. It's a weird story because I have to imagine if they just said, we're going to raise money to build a wall and we're going to take a salary, there would have been no issue here. But this whole thing is weird. Apparently, they were paying off personal expenses, credit cards, buying boats. So let's go. I want to go through this story. But what's interesting about this is that a year and a half ago, actually, many conservatives were raising red flags about this, saying, we don't trust it. And now what I find particularly, predictable is the media is blaming Donald Trump, Trump Jr., and other conservatives when quite literally they're the victims of this. OK, first of all, innocent until proven guilty. Let's see what the allegation, we're going to look at the allegations. We'll look at what the indictment says. In the indictment, apparently there's text messages where this dude is saying salaries will never be disclosed. But on Twitter, he's saying, I'm never going to take a penny. So it sounds a bit dirty. However, we're also in an election year, a few months out. And of course, the media is now blaming Trump Jr. Like I said, listen, the people who were defrauded out of their money in this scheme and the people who supported this were all being tricked if the allegations are true. That would make Donald Trump and Trump Jr. the victims of the fraud because they've come out in support saying, hey, that's great, build the wall. And now it's being used against them. Let's do this. Let's start with the news story and see what's going on. I want to show you some of the tweets that are happening. I want to show you what the wall project was, where it was. And I also want to point out some media hypocrisy, as I often do. The New York Post says former White House advisor Steve Bannon indicted on fraud charges. They say Steve Bannon has been indicted on charges. He defrauded donors to a $25 million campaign to build a border wall, federal prosecutors in Manhattan said Thursday. Bannon and others are accused of ripping off donations to the We Build the Wall GoFundMe fundraiser that was launched in December 2018. Audrey Strauss, acting U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, said the defendants defrauded hundreds of thousands of donors, capitalizing on their interest in funding a border wall to raise millions of dollars under the false pretense that all of that money would be spent on construction. Bannon, the former chief strategist for President Trump, personally pocketed $1 million in contributions meant for construction of the border wall, funneled through a nonprofit under his control, prosecutors alleged. Meanwhile, We Build the Wall founder Brian Kolfage, 38, promised donors he wouldn't take a single penny from the pot. But Bannon and their cohorts, quote, secretly schemed to pass hundreds of thousands of dollars to Kolfage, which he used to fund his lavish lifestyle, Strauss said. Though it was an initial hit, raising $17 million in its first week of launching, GoFundMe yanked We Build the Wall, saying Kolfage, a Purple Heart recipient, needed to transfer the funds to a nonprofit organization or else they'd be returned. Kolfage, Bannon, and Andrew Bottolato, 56, a venture capitalist Bannon was already working with, formed the nonprofit We Build the Wall, Inc., which promised to fund the private construction of the border wall. Donors were reassured that the funds wouldn't be misused because they'd have to opt in to having their donation transferred to the nonprofit. As Kolfage insisted he would not take a penny in salary or compensation, the indictment said. The brazen crew capitalized on Kolfage's promise, with Bottolato saying it removes all self-interest taint and gives Brian Kolfage sainthood, according to the filing. The alleged cover allowed Bannon, Kolfage, Bottolato, and a fourth man, Timothy Shea, to broker a secret deal to pay Kolfage $100,000 up front and then $20,000 a month in payments that were allegedly passed through Bannon's nonprofit and a shell company controlled by Shea, court papers said. Bannon, however, made it clear he was running the show, prosecutors alleged. So here's what it sounds like. Well, here's a quote. There would be, quote, no deals I don't approve. It sounds like Kolfage started this, and I'm just going to speculate here. Kolfage started this. They were trying to figure out a way to actually take control of the project. So they promised him money through Bannon's nonprofit. I don't know the full nitty gritty details, but what you need to understand is that if at any point the GoFundMe money went to the nonprofit from Bannon, and then in any way, any money for any reason went to Kolfage, they can say, I mean, straight up, the money's mixed. It's a mixed bag. If the nonprofit took the GoFundMe money and the nonprofit, even if it got money from somewhere else, paid Kolfage, there you go. They're going to say, this is a weird thing how finance works. And it's not necessarily true, but in some circumstances, this is how it might actually be played out. And you got to be careful of this. Let's say the GoFundMe raised $20 million. They send that money to the nonprofit, but the nonprofit also raises $10 million from somewhere else. Well, now the nonprofit is the project. That means any money they raise from somewhere else that goes to him, too bad. The GoFundMe money, that is the project. Whether you give money to it or not, you have one pool of cash. If that pool now pays out, they can say that GoFundMe money was used to pay him. However, what it seems like is being alleged is that they tried to manipulate the game, as it were, to say, oh, look, we are putting money into this. We're going to pay him. It's unrelated. But in reality, essentially, we're buying out the project. That's just how it sounds so far. Let's keep reading. Some of the payouts were concealed as payments to Kolfage's wife for media, with others marked for social media. Quote, as far as the public knows, no one is getting paid. Kolfage texted Battleato. He also wrote, salaries will never be disclosed. By May 2019, I mean, that's just not true. That to me is insane, because nonprofits have what's called, I believe it's called the 990, where they release all of this information and we know who's getting paid what. That's why they're tax exempt. By May 2019, the nonprofit faced mounting scrutiny from the public after failing to start construction on the wall. At the time, Kolfage repeated claims that the group would break ground in a matter of days. He also told donors, there's no update because we are remaining silent for a very good reason. 5 months later, the foursome caught wind that the feds were probing their alleged scheme and began using encrypted messaging services. They also changed We Build the Wall's website to remove any mention that Kolfage was not being compensated, adding a statement that Kolfage would start receiving a salary in January 2020. All told, Bannon raked in $1 million through his nonprofit, with some of the funds going toward Kolfage's monthly payments and other personal expenses, prosecutors claimed. Kolfage, a triple amputee who lives in Florida, allegedly swiped more than $350,000 belonging on a boat, luxury SUV, golf cart, jewelry, cosmetic surgery, personal tax payments, and credit card debt, the indictment said. Battleato and Shea, 49, also received hundreds of thousands of dollars in donor funds. The four men are each charged with one count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and one count of conspiracy to commit money laundering. Each charge carries up to 20 years in prison. All four were arrested Thursday morning, with Bannon, 66, scheduled to appear in Manhattan federal court later this afternoon. I don't understand why they didn't just say from the get-go, this is Brian's fault. Look at this. He tweeted, January 13, 2019, media is lying. Our GoFundMe campaign is smoking hot. It's not being canceled or all refunded. We are building the wall mile by mile for 50% of the cost. If you donated before January 11th, just opt in on at GoFundMe. Maybe this is bunk. Maybe this is just the feds just going after Bannon and they're using it to make Trump look bad. I don't know. We're going to have to see how the charges play out. And I am not a legal expert, but I'll tell you this. Maybe the argument from Kolfage and from Bannon is that they changed to a new nonprofit and told people to opt in. Therefore, the new nonprofit would be paying him. I don't know. I just think it's really dumb that he tweeted. I thought it was pretty clear. I made a promise that I would never take a penny. 100% of fundraising through GoFundMe donations will only go towards the wall. 100% means 100%, right? Board won't see any of that money. Donations will be accountable by an audit committee as well. We've heard a lot of this, and in the end, at least according to these allegations, it doesn't seem to be true. We have the official statement here from the Department of Justice. They say Audrey Strauss, the acting U.S. State's Attorney for the Southern District of New York, and Philip R. Bartlett, Inspector General of the New York Field Office of the United States Postal Inspection Service, announced the unsealing of an indictment charging the four people. We understand this. They say, Strauss said, as alleged, the defendants defrauded hundreds of thousands of donors, capitalizing on their interest in funding a border wall to raise millions of dollars under the false pretense that all of that money would be spent on construction, while repeatedly assuring donors that Brian Kolfage, the founder and public face of We Build the Wall, would not be paid a cent. The defendant secretly schemed to pass hundreds of thousands of dollars to Kolfage, which he used to fund his lavish lifestyle. We thank the USPIS for their partnership in investigating this case, and we remain dedicated to rooting out and prosecuting fraud wherever we find it. So first, Margaret Brennan noted that Bannon was taken into custody today, apparently on a boat and by the Postal Service, which I got to just throw in there as kind of strange. It's just, hey, it's 2020. It's weird. I think it was Ford Fisher who tweeted, if you had Steve Bannon arrested by the post office on your bingo card for 2020, mark it off now. Or he said, any of you have this? It is very, very strange. We also have this, which notes, this is from the indictment, basically says the same thing. They say Bannon, through a nonprofit organization under his control, received over $1 million from We Build the Wall, which Bannon used to, among other things, secretly pay Kolfage. And that's the point I was making earlier on. The money came from We Build the Wall to a different nonprofit, and then Bannon's nonprofit paid Kolfage probably for something else. The way the scheme would work is they pay Bannon's nonprofit for marketing services or consulting. Then Bannon's nonprofit hires Kolfage and says he's a consultant and pays him. You can't do that. It's secretly shuffling money around. I guess that's the indictment. We'll see. We'll see for sure. This is interesting though, because while the media is trying to blame Trump and Trump Jr., and I'll show you that in a second, the Daily Caller and many other conservatives have been raising the red flags about this January 14th, 2019. And if you look now, Trump supporters are calling them fraudsters and calling them out. And it looks like the victims of this are Trump supporters, Trump himself, and Trump Jr. In this old story, I'll just give you the quick the buzz notes here. Triple amputee Air Force veteran Brian Kolfage is refusing to answer basic questions about his new nonprofit organization that will use the funds raised by his viral $20 million GoFundMe to build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border. Kolfage announced We Build the Wall, Inc. on Friday, but documents submitted to Florida reveal the nonprofit was created over 2 weeks ago in late December. Kolfage is directing check donations to a separate organization, We Fund the Wall, Inc., with a P.O. box in Houston. The Daily Caller News Foundation has been unable to find any record of its existence. Charity Watch president Daniel Borochoff says Kolfage's new nonprofit raises a huge red flag. Let me read you how they wrap up the story. They show, filing numbers and everything. They say, Kolfage now says his highly experienced team is highly confident that we can complete significant elements of the wall in less time for less money than the federal government. All contributions collected by Kolfage's GoFundMe after Friday will be automatically routed to We Build the Wall, Inc. And Kolfage claimed Sunday 1/3 of his 340,000 donors had already opted into the nonprofit. Some people have said online that if the people who gave the money don't care how it was spent, it's not fraud. That is not true, because a lot of people might not know. A lot of people might actually be upset. And if you get one victim, well, then there you go. That's why I don't understand why Kolfage didn't just say, I am going to embark on this project. If I'm expected to do this, I expect to be compensated. He could have said that from day one. And more importantly, instead of funneling money to Bannon's nonprofit and then to Kolfage, assuming the allegations are true, they could have just said to everybody, we know that we promised in the beginning, but Brian needs support. He's a triple amputee and he's been working on this very hard and we think he deserves a salary. Most people probably would have said, yes, you can change your mind. And then it probably wouldn't be so easy to do. But listen, what is bothering me the most right now is this. Michelle Goldberg tweets, the We Build the Wall website is still up. Here's Don Jr.'s endorsement. And this is true. It's there. He says this is a private enterprise at its finest, doing it better, faster, cheaper than anything else. And what you guys are doing is pretty amazing. It started from a grassroots effort, and it's doing some wonderful things for an important issue, Donald Trump Jr. All that says to me is that fraudsters made promises they did not keep, were going behind everyone's back, and Donald Trump Jr. trusted them and was taken advantage of. All that says when Trump Sr. was asked about it, and he said it was a good thing. I believe that people have also mentioned that. It's the same exact narrative. It was Trump and his supporters who were defrauded off of an issue that Trump had been pushing to make somebody some cash. Now, my understanding is they did actually build Wall. It doesn't seem like they built all that much, though. Now, Chris Hayes of MSNBC chimes in saying, here's what he says. This is also such a perfect encapsulation of the entire Trump and long-standing conservative grift about running government like a business. Michelle Goldberg responds, yeah, if it came out of the writer's room, you'd send it back for being too on the nose. It is not a perfect encapsulation. The problem with people who think business people can run government better is that they think that, when you run a business and you're the boss, you can snap your fingers and get something done. When you're working in government, you can't do that. You've got committees, bureaucracy, you've got restrictions, regulations. That's not the problem with this. The problem is like any con man, any grift, they're ripping people off and they're using a cause. It's a con. When someone cons you, it means confidence. It's a confidence trick. A con artist is a confidence artist. They built up confidence in many people by claiming to support a cause that Trump and his supporters wanted and ripped them off as per the allegations. For all we know, the charges, they'll lose. For all we know, Bannon's going to be like, look at all of these things that we did. It was above board. I don't know. Innocent until proven guilty. And I will stress, I said the same thing of Antifa on the far left. The guy who's accused of snipping the brake lines, I always say, innocent until proven guilty. However, let's be real. All of this is going to be weaponized and used against Trump. Steve Bannon, there was one tweet where there's one tweet where Trump is quoted as saying that Bannon's doing great work outside, that it's better that he's not in the campaign because of the great things he's doing. And then Trump says, it's great, but they're all basically involved. They are now going to try to victim blame, as it were, all of the Trump supporters who put money into this and all the conservatives who had been ranting about it endlessly for over a year ago are being smeared as though they were too stupid or they were in on it. No. You've got the Daily Caller. You've got many people pointing this out, many people who are raising red flags, and they were conservatives. And the victims are the Trump supporters themselves. So why won't the media say it was a grifter? It was a right-wing grifter. This is what they wanted, right? This is exactly, well, to be fair, he says the conservative grift running a government like a business is wrong. It was absolutely a grift. So over at the website, when you go to We Build the Wall, which is still up, they mention 2 locations where they've built wall. I got to add, however, take a look at this. Project number 1, Sunderland Park, New Mexico. Flying El Paso International Airport. They say the address is 1000 Brickland Road, Sunderland Park, New Mexico. There's directions. They do a private tour. Public visits are free. Disclaimer. Wall and land is owned by We Build the Wall and reserve the right to remove anyone for any reason. This wall is decently long, but it's actually not really that long at all. Maybe the goal of this was really just to defraud people. They found a cause that everyone would rally behind. They did maybe as much work as they could do. I don't know. Maybe they ultimately just wanted to rally support behind the cause, make a point, and get paid. I don't know. We'll see how the indictments play out. But over on Google Maps, we can see, well, this is where it is. American Eagle Brick Co. is the address they give, and it looks like the wall is right here. Unfortunately, I can't actually go down and look. I can do a street view. There was nothing here before, just this monument and stuff. So they did build some wall, but I'm going to be honest with all of you guys. It's not that much wall. People could very easily, I would imagine, just walk around or whatever. It looks like maybe the topography here was restricting people from moving, so this portion did shut down a known smuggling route. And I believe that's the point they were making. One important thing you need to understand about all of the wall stuff that Trump is doing, a lot of people on the left like to say Trump hasn't built any wall. The main goal has been security. While Trump did very bombastically say a big, beautiful 30-foot concrete wall, sea to shining sea, I'm paraphrasing and trying to be silly, mind you. But Trump did say, a big, beautiful wall, paraphrasing. And ultimately what ended up was select bollard fencing in key areas because it makes more sense. Trump gave all of his supporters this big vision, and the left likes to act that his supporters aren't happy with it. No, many of them are, because this was targeting key smuggling routes, areas where it was really easy for people to get in. This says Project Number 2, Mission, Texas. Flying McAllen International Airport, and they say public visits and private tours are coming soon. The wall is on private property. Owners reserve the right to remove anyone for any reason. So I don't know as well if we can actually, I don't think there's there might be a street view here where we can, no, there's no street view here. So we can't actually look at what this wall is because again, it's private property. But it looks like they were actually, doing some work. And it's unfortunate this is how things are playing out. But look, like I said, red flags. Now, I do want to make sure I highlight this. Ari Fletcher, in a totally separate story, but still relevant. Guess what the difference is among these three stories of guilty pleas and indictments that made the New York Times front page and the one that was buried on page 16? Take a look at this. New York Times front page, Mueller inquiry, Russia, Mueller, what does it say? Manafort indicted. We have the next front page. It says, another indictment. Then we have another page here, pleading guilty, Cohen implicated. But then when it was ex-FBI lawyer expected to plead guilty in the review of the Russia inquiry, page 16. Rachel Maddow didn't talk about it on her show. She just talked about salacious Cohen gossip, and the New York Times didn't put it on the front page. This is something I think is important to highlight in how the media operates. They're going to go nuts on this story. They're going to blame Trump. They're going to blame the victims. They're going to smear them. That's what the media does. And when it comes to the actual indictments, with Russiagate, they're going to ignore the story. That's what they do. Beginning of the end. When it all comes out, he will have nowhere to hide. And at the same time, Donald Trump, here's what it says. A federal judge has thrown out President Trump's effort to block the Manhattan District Attorney from subpoenaing his financial records. The reason I'm just highlighting this is because of Scaramucci's beginning of the end statement. Keep in mind how the media operates. Even when it's shown that there was, malicious actors targeting the Trump campaign, it's not the beginning of the end, is it? Could we say the walls are closing in on Obama and Biden? The media runs protection for them. So take what they say with a grain of salt as it pertains to the Bannon indictment. And we're going to have to see how this case plays out. But there you go. It's big breaking news. Rarely do I have actual hard breaking segments. The story came out, shortly before I recorded this. By the time you saw it, you've seen it. There's probably more developments. So I'll leave it there. Stick around. The next segment is coming up over at my main channel, which is separate from this one. It's youtube.com/Timcast. Check it out. And I will see you all there at 4 p.m. Thanks for hanging out.